to get my back blown out in peace. You think I got time to talk about a divorce that's a year old?
Stop scrolling because this story didn't end with a breakup announcement, a public argument, or a carefully worded statement. It ended with a block. And sometimes a block speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Teyana Taylor blocking. Aaron Pierre, after news broke that his girlfriend was 4 months pregnant, wasn't impulsive. It wasn't dramatic. And it wasn't done for attention. It was a line being drawn. A quiet final boundary set without noise or spectacle. And the reason behind it left fans stunned, confused, and quietly heartbroken. For a long time, people had been watching Teyana from a distance, noticing subtle changes. Not the kind that demanded applause or validation, but the kind that signaled growth. She seemed calmer, grounded, intentional. After everything she had endured emotionally, she wasn't chasing chaos anymore. She wasn't entertaining confusion. She was protecting her peace, prioritizing healing, and rebuilding herself in a way that felt real and sustainable. That's why, when Aaron Pierre entered her life, it didn't feel messy. It didn't feel reckless. It felt intentional. Their connection didn't announce itself loudly. There were no dramatic red carpet moments at first, no cryptic captions, no public flirting meant to stir speculation. Instead, it unfolded quietly. Through presence, through support, through moments that didn't need explanation. It was subtle, and that subtlety made it feel genuine. People close to Teyana noticed the shift before the public ever did. She smiled differently. She carried herself with ease. There was a softness mixed with strength that hadn't been there in a long time. Aaron appeared steady, attentive, emotionally present. He didn't push for labels or rush the process. He didn't pressure her into defining things before she was ready. After emotional exhaustion, that kind of energy feels safe. It makes you lower your guard without realizing you're doing it. Fans sensed it too. Slowly, quietly, people began rooting for them, not because the situation was dramatic or entertaining, but because it looked healthy. It looked like two people connecting away from the noise, away from public mess. And for Teyana, that mattered. More than anything, trust builds quickly when vulnerability is involved. When someone shows up during your healing phase, you assume they understand the responsibility that comes with that. You assume honesty. You assume transparency. You assume there's nothing major being hidden. That assumption is where the story takes its turn. Because while Teyana believed she was building something clean and emotionally safe, someone else was quietly existing in the background. Aaron's girlfriend, not a rumor, not speculation. A real woman with a real place in his life, just not visible to the public. At first, nothing seemed off. There were no obvious red flags. No overlapping appearances. No public timelines that raised questions. And that's what made the truth so painful. It didn't unfold gradually. It didn't come out in pieces. It dropped all at once. The pregnancy reveal hit like a shockwave. 4 months pregnant, 4 months isn't early. 4 months means timelines matter. 4 months means emotions were being invested somewhere else while a connection was forming. Here, 4 months means honesty wasn't fully present from the beginning, and once that realization set in, the conversation changed completely. This wasn't about jealousy. This wasn't about competition. This wasn't even about labels. It was about trust. Because when timelines overlap, intentions matter far less than impact. You can explain feelings endlessly, but you can't undo the reality that someone was emotionally present in your life while actively building a future somewhere else. People expected a reaction, a post, a statement, a cryptic caption, something. Teyana gave none of that. She didn't confront him publicly. She didn't throw shade. She didn't drag names or hint at betrayal. She blocked him, and that one action said everything. Blocking isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's about clarity. Sometimes it's the moment you realize there's nothing left to discuss because the truth has already spoken. Blocking is what happens when trust breaks in a way explanations can't fix. Think about it. For months, conversations were happening. Decisions were being made. Silence was chosen when honesty should have been present. And whether Aaron intended harm or not, the damage was already done. People close to Teyana say she didn't explode. She didn't demand answers. She didn't go back and forth. She simply chose distance, and that's how you know it cut deep. When someone stops asking questions, It's because they already know everything they need to know. Aaron, on the other hand, reportedly didn't expect things to end like this. There was shock, confusion, a scramble to explain. But explanations don't hold weight when timelines don't align. You can't talk your way out of emotional overlap. You can't clarify something that should have been disclosed from the start, and then came the silence. No statement. No denial, no attempt to clear things up publicly. Just quiet. That silence made people uneasy. Fans weren't demanding drama. They were asking one simple question. If nothing was wrong, why did everything shut down so fast? The block. The distance. The sudden freeze. Social media did what it always does when there's no explanation. It filled in the blanks. One side rushed to Aaron's defense, reminding everyone that privacy matters and situations aren't always black and white. Another side stood firmly with Teyana, pointing out that timelines don't lie and women rarely react without reason, but the loudest reaction wasn't anger. It was disappointment. A quite sinking feeling from fans who thought this chapter was different because this wasn't about a cheating headline or viral scandal. It was about emotional honesty, about clarity, about whether people are brave enough to be transparent when things get complicated. The silence didn't scream guilt. It screamed avoidance, and that hurt the most. When people expect maturity and get mystery instead, trust takes the hit. No matter how this unfolds, one thing became clear. The silence spoke, and not in Aaron's favor. What made the situation sting even more was the timing. Teyana wasn't reckless with her heart. She wasn't moving blindly. She was healing. She was careful. She was intentional. When someone enters your life during that phase, the responsibility is heavier. You don't get to be vague. You don't get to let things figure themselves out. You tell the truth fully. Blocking Aaron wasn't about erasing him. It was about choosing herself. About refusing to process pain she didn't create. About protecting the version of herself she worked hard to rebuild. That's why fans connected to it so deeply, because so many people have been there. That moment when you realize someone didn't lie loudly, they lied quietly. When good intentions can't erase real harm. When you're forced to choose peace over closure, this wasn't a dramatic ending. It was a boundary. And boundaries don't require explanations. As days passed, people began revisiting old interactions. Small moments that once seemed harmless suddenly felt heavy. The quiet nature of the connection, the vague communication, the things left unsaid. Each detail slowly built a picture of a situation where honesty wasn't prioritized when it mattered most. Fans reflected on the subtle signs they'd missed. They debated intentions, timing, and what might have stayed hidden behind the scenes. In the end, it wasn't about spectacle. It was about understanding that silence can hurt just as much as words, sometimes more. Because no one wants to realize they were emotionally invested while someone else was building something permanent elsewhere. Teyana's response showed growth. An older version of her might have explained herself publicly, might have defended her feelings, might have addressed the narrative head-on. But this version didn't need to. She already knew her worth, and when you know your worth, you don't argue with confusion. You remove yourself from it. Now, the question remains, what happens next? Will Aaron speak? Will the timeline be explained? Or will silence continue to speak for him? And will Teyana ever address it publicly, or has she already said everything she needed to say by walking away? One thing is undeniable. This wasn't about drama. It wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about clout. It was about trust being broken. At the worst possible time, people can debate intentions all day, but impact doesn't lie. 4 months is 4 months. And silence during that time is a choice. Teyana chose herself. She chose peace. She chose clarity. She chose to walk away without turning it into a spectacle. And sometimes that's the strongest move of all. So now, it's your turn. Was blocking the right decision? Is emotional overlap betrayal even without labels? And did Aaron owe Teyana full transparency from the very beginning? Drop your thoughts below, because this story didn't end with a post or a statement. It ended with a block. And sometimes that says everything.